and welcome to my vlog. My name is Erin and this is Diversity in World Building Part 3. If you haven't watched Part 1 and 2 yet, I will put the links for those in the description below. Most of this should apply to any story that you're writing, but I am leaning a little bit more towards fantasy. Number 6, religious diversity. The world has tons of religions and many different sects and denominations within those. This is important to note because oftentimes in world building there will only be one religion and everyone will follow it. That is not how things work. There will always be dissenters and atheists and people who have different ideas about the divine and human worship. I'm not going to go into developing a religion here because that will be covered in another video topic. How much religion impacts your story will depend both on how you have developed the religion and the society, and how devout your characters are. 6.1 Religious oppression. Both historically and in contemporary society, there are religions that are actively oppressed. Some cases are more globally prevalent and others are specific to certain countries or regions. Some religions may have global reach, but they are persecuted in areas where they are not the majority. If you are writing about a religion or using one to inspire a fantasy religion, be aware of its status around the world where it is actively practiced. Be aware of what religions are marginalized where you are and to what extent. Do your research as to whether it is marginalized elsewhere in the world, especially places where you are likely to have readers. Take those into consideration for how you are writing those religions into your story, either as a direct parallel or as an inspiration for a fantasy version. 6.2 Social attitudes and characters. What religion is top dog in your society? How are minority religions treated? What religion does your character belong to, and do they actively believe in it and practice? What are the common beliefs for each of the religions in your story, and how do they impact the characters' behaviors and their interactions with other characters? How do your characters interact with the deities or spiritual beings in their religion? Number 7, age. People of all ages exist. Unless you've got a whole Children of the Corn thing going on, you should probably have a few adults in your story. Obviously, you want your main characters to reflect your genre and your target audience, but that doesn't mean that you can't have a diverse array of other age groups. 7.1 Ageism. Ageism is a thing and it rears its head all over the place. Women of a certain age tend to only be mothers and grandmothers. In relationships, women are usually the younger ones, sometimes with a much older love interest. I'm not saying that you can't write books with hot 20-somethings, but other people exist too. Just like with all the other kinds of diversity, having characters from a diverse age range is going to lend authenticity to your story. 7.2 Social attitudes and characters. How does your society view aging? Are certain rights restricted if you fall outside of a certain age range? How old are your characters and how does that impact their participation in society? How old is your character in relation to their friends and their romantic partners? Number 8. Body size, shape, and appearance. There should be more in your story than dudes who are 6'5" Vikings with an 8-pack and women who are 5 feet tall with a perfect hourglass and boobs up to her chin. People come in every shape and size, and this is rarely reflected in the media. 8.1 Plus sizes. When fat characters are included in stories, they are often the butt of jokes and very poorly treated by the rest of the cast. I don't know why it needs to be said, but having a body mass that is above or below the average range is not a character flaw. Please quit writing it that way. People carry more weight for a variety of reasons, and unless your world is facing a very extended famine, you need to have a variety of body types. 8.2 Pigment Conditions. Albinism is a disorder that affects the level of melanin in the skin. This is where you see people who would have white blonde hair, very pale skin, and maybe substantially lighter compared to other members of their family. There are not many symptoms to albinism besides what is visible, but they are much more prone to skin cancer and vision problems. Like many of these marginalized groups, people with albinism tend to be most often depicted as magical or evil. Vitiligo is a skin condition in which certain areas of skin lose their pigment. It's actually fairly common and about 1% of the population develop it at some point. It can affect any and all groups. 8.3 Social attitudes and characters. What is the societal view of larger body types? What is the societal view of pigment conditions? Are there stigmas associated with either? How do your characters feel about their body? How are they treated because of it? This applies to all characters, not just characters who are plus-sized or who have pigment disorders. Number 9. Socioeconomic status. Socioeconomic status is your social and economic position in relation to others. It is based on income, education, and occupation. This is where you get the high, middle, and low classes coming in. The socioeconomic status of your character is going to have a huge impact into their opportunities, activities, even their health and education, depending on the society that you've developed. 9.1 factors. Income, education, occupation, health, and wealth will all influence socioeconomic status. If you are part of a family that is from a higher class, you are much more likely to end up in that same class as an adult because you are much more likely to have received more opportunities than those in middle or lower classes. Some societies have social mobility and others don't, so you'll have to decide how that works within your story. If you are leaning towards a more egalitarian society or one that has a lot of strong social supports, then your characters are much more likely to have similar education opportunities and income. You can have characters of any and all socioeconomic backgrounds. They will all have different resources, knowledge, and skills to bring to things based on their current situation and their upbringing. It is important to note that socioeconomic status is not an indication of someone's character. There is the mistaken idea that if you are poor, it is because you are not working hard enough, or that you have some flaw or lacking morality. But that is not the case. Wealth or lack thereof is reliant on a complex system of factors that tend to benefit those already in higher classes and create barriers for social mobility of the lower classes. 9.2 Power dynamics. I know there is the fantasy of getting paired up with a billionaire, but have you ever stopped to think how much more a billionaire could fuck up your life than the average person if they wanted to? Consider how much more power they would have in the relationship and the world in general. If you are writing characters into relationships with others of vastly different socioeconomic statuses, you need to be aware of any power dynamics that creates, and you have to manage it. 9.3 Relationship with money. The wealth bracket that a person grows up in is going to have a huge impact in how they view and interact with money. If someone has grown up comfortable and secure, they are going to view things very differently from someone who has grown up in poverty. It can be impossible for someone who has not grown up in true poverty to ever truly understand the depths of how much it influences a person and how much it affects their choices and behaviors. Poverty can create food scarcity, malnutrition, excessive stress, drive people to the streets, and in many societies it will also impact the education, future health, and opportunities of people. 9.4 Social attitudes and characters. What is your character's socioeconomic status? What opportunities did it give or restrict from your characters? Have they always been at that status? How has it affected that character, and how does it influence their interactions with other characters? How does your character feel about their current socioeconomic status and any others that they've been a part of? What is your character's relationship with money, and how does it affect them? Number 10, including harm. I know this might come as a shock to some writers, but you do not have to include racism, homophobia, transphobia, fatphobia, ableism, etc. in your writing. If you are crafting a fantasy world, they don't have to be present at all. You are the god of your story, and if you don't want those things present, you can skip them entirely. There are plenty of other reasons that people can be dicks to each other. If you desperately want to include casual hatred and discrimination against a certain group in your story, please do some introspective work as to why you feel like you need that so badly. It is one thing if it slips into your writing out of ignorance or internalized biases, but that is very different from choosing to construct a society where you integrate those things into it. Number 11, what else to consider? 11.1 Intersectionality. People are diverse and complicated. It is not unheard of in the slightest for someone to be a minority race, and neurodivergent, and queer, and any number of other things. Your characters should be as diverse and interesting as the people in the real world. Don't be slapping in a single skinny white neurotypical gay and call it a day. You'll also want to consider comorbidity. Some conditions very commonly show up together, such as depression and anxiety. Based on what you've selected for your characters, you'll want to know what else is commonly present. Some conditions are also more common among specific groups, whether that is from a specific environment, the traits being inherited, or any number of other things. 11.2 The social default. Be aware of what the social default is where you are. Where I live, the social default is cis, white, straight, able-bodied, and male. What is the social default that you see most often in your media? The social default may not even be the actual majority, but when it comes to media, they are filling far more roles than any other group. The call to write diversely requires you to push past the social default and towards an actually realistic cast. 11.3 Character roles. If you are choosing to include very minimal diversity, you will want to be very careful about the roles that you are assigning those characters. People in minority groups are very commonly cast as the villain. The other role they commonly play is the best friend or sidekick to the character who is the social default. Marginalized people can fill any role in your story, and they should be varied, unique, and interesting. Make sure you watch for your internal biases and see where you are placing these characters in the context of your story. 11.4 Stereotypes and Coding. Be aware of stereotypes that exist for whatever facets you are combining to create your character. Avoid them whenever possible and focus on creating realistic, well-developed characters instead of relying on a few stereotypical traits. If you are not already aware, coding is when characters are given specific traits that could be read as being part of a specific group, but it is never explicitly stated. The most common version of this that I have seen is queer coding, which you will see with a lot of Disney villains. Be aware of coding sneaking into your writing because it is usually based off of negative stereotypes, and no one wants to be perpetuating those. Number 12. What can you do? 12.1 Research. Do your research! Do as much as you possibly can before you start asking another human to put in effort on your behalf. Every single question that you think of that you would go ask a person, look up yourself first. If things are still unclear or you haven't been able to find the answer that you're looking for, then you can consider opening up your research to people. It is very important that you do not put the burden of education on people from marginalized groups. If you are going to ask them for assistance, even if they are a friend of yours, you have to have done the bare minimum first. 12.2 Beta readers. If you have a diverse cast, you should also aim to have a diverse group of beta readers. I mean, you should try to have a diverse group of beta readers anyways, but it is especially important in this case. Obviously, that is not always in your control because beta readers are volunteering themselves for this, but you can still put it out there. If you need a very specific group of people, then you need to ask for it. When you're first communicating with beta readers, be sure to collect their demographics so you know if any of them fall into the groups that you're writing about. Listen to what your beta readers are saying and take note of anything that your marginalized beta readers point out. 12.3 Sensitivity readers. If you are worried, and really if you're writing about any group that you're not a part of, you should probably be a little worried, then hire a sensitivity reader. Most important with this, if you do hire one, be sure to listen to them. If you choose not to follow their advice and your work starts getting ripped apart for something that you ignored, do not tell people that it's fine because you got a sensitivity reader. Don't go throwing people under the bus like that. If you are not going to listen to them, then what is the point of hiring one? And now for the conclusion. In the end, diversity is about representing a realistic world and making your work inclusive. Seeing yourself in media is something that a lot of groups don't often get to experience. And most of the time, the groups that are arguing against diversity are ones who have a lot of representation in media already. Now, it's true that there are some marginalized people who don't care about rep or say that they don't care about rep, but these people are not a monolith. The push for diversity is not a ploy to get you to write about people that you don't want to write about. It's asking you to examine your work and your biases and to grow as a person. If all you write about is people in the majority, there's probably some personal work that you need to be doing. I don't mean that as an attack. Every single person on the planet has internalized biases, and it is our job to try to learn what those are and get over them. As a creator, it is in your best interest to listen and reflect on what is being asked for and why. Educate yourself as best you can. Be thoughtful in your writing. Go through the steps to minimize harm. Listen to the people who are helping you. Grow and change what you've written if necessary. I know that it can be daunting, but there is no part of being an author that is truly easy. So that's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope it was helpful. This brings our diversity series to its conclusion. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. If you'd like to be notified as soon as I upload, then ring that bell. All my social media links will be in the description below. Both of my books, Olympian Confessions, Hades and Persephone, and Olympian Confessions, Hera, are available now in ebook and paperback. If you would like your manuscript critiqued by me, you can check out my new critique service. If you've enjoyed my videos and learned something from them, consider being part of my Patreon family. I will see you all next week for another video. Bye!